All right. Good afternoon. A couple of announcements to share with you. First, our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed is on her way to Washington, D.C., just south of here, where she's scheduled to participate in the 2024 Aspen Security Forum. The forum will bring together key decision makers and thought leaders for discussions around the world, discussions around some of the key global issues we are all facing. This will take place around 3:30, I think, this afternoon, 3 o'clock. You could watch it online, and the Deputy Secretary General will be back this afternoon, tonight in New York. We just heard a pretty bleak picture on internal displacement. I want to share with you today that our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs just released their global humanitarian appeal for 2025, calling for 47 billion, that's with a B, billion US dollars to provide life-saving aid to 190 million people in 32 countries and 9 refugee-hosting regions. Speaking at the launch of the Global Humanitarian Overview in Geneva, Tom Fletcher, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, said the world is on fire, noting that the main culprits are both man-made. The first, he said, is conflict, which is lasting longer and are hitting children particularly hard. OCHA says that nearly 123 million men, women, and children were driven from their homes by conflict this year. The second culprit, he said, is climate emergency, with the most vulnerable people on the planet shouldering the lion's share of the impacts. He also spoke to the press, underscoring that we need to reset our relationship with those in greatest need on the planet. The appeal was also launched in Kuwait City by Joyce Masuya, our Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, and in Nairobi by Edem Wasurnu, the OCHA's Director of Operations and Advocacy. There's a lot of information on the interweb for you. Turning to Syria, just a couple of political and humanitarian updates. Our special envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, has been working the phones with the full range of Syrian parties and key international stakeholders. He's also closely engaging with senior officials. This morning, he convened Russian, Turkish, and U.S. representatives in Geneva in the ad hoc ceasefire task force. He also spoke with Ali Ashgar Khaji, the Iranian foreign minister, the Iranian foreign minister's senior advisor for special political affairs. Last night, he also spoke over the phone with the Syrian foreign minister, Bassam al-Sabag. Mr. Pedersen will soon be traveling to Doha for a number of meetings. His message to all is the same. It is urgent to de-escalate, it is urgent to protect civilians, and it is urgent to prevent further bloodshed. He also says we need to see a new and serious engagement of the Syrian parties and key international actors on a political solution. Mr. Pedersen also conveyed his message during the Security Council's meeting yesterday on the situation in Syria. Those remarks were shared with you. Mr. Pedersen also underscored that the Astana guarantors and the United States must work to calm the situation and push for a genuine political process in line with Security Council 2254, which has all the elements needed for a political solution. On the humanitarian front, the new developments, is no surprise, are worsening an already horrific humanitarian situation for civilians in the north of the country. Our humanitarian colleagues are painting a very bleak picture indeed of the situation on the ground. They're telling us that people trapped in frontline areas have been unable to reach safer locations or access to basic services and humanitarian assistance. The fighting continues to displace people on a large scale. Our humanitarian colleagues also stress that the parties must ensure safe passage for those who are fleeing, and we underscore that whether people decide to stay or whether they decide to leave, they must be protected and have access to essential needs. We and our partners on the ground are continuing our efforts, including by providing food, winter items, protection services, and other assistance to newly displaced people in Idlib and in northern Aleppo, but safety constraints remain a key challenge, as you can all imagine. And today, the International Organization for Migration sent 10 trucks of critical winter supplies from Gaziantep in Turkey to northwest Syria, adding to relief items it had already pre-positioned for distribution. In Aleppo, some public services and critical facilities, including hospitals, bakeries, power stations, water, internet, and telecommunications, are all disrupted or non-functional due to a shortage of supplies and a shortage of personnel. And as always, in every conflict, the children are bearing the brunt of the hostilities. UNICEF says they're very alarmed by the recent escalations, which reportedly resulted in the killing of at least 7 children and injured at least another 32. Most of the displaced are women and children. Many schools are now closed in Aleppo. We're coordinating with our partners to provide emergency learning and psychosocial support for children affected by these hostilities, especially at displacement sites. And across the border in Lebanon, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says more than 600,000 people have begun to return to their homes 1 week after the ceasefire announcement. 2/3 of them are heading to the south and to Namibia governorates. These journeys are challenging as many families have had their homes destroyed, infrastructure has been devastated, essential services have been disrupted, and there continues to be insecurity and access restrictions. Today, our humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon, Imran Riza, along with the Lebanese government and local authorities, went to South Lebanon and Namibia governorates to assess the situation and meet people impacted by the crisis. They witnessed an overwhelming level of destruction, with entire villages leveled, hospitals not functional, severely damaged water infrastructure, and limited education access, mirroring conditions across the country. We and our partners are supporting the government-led efforts in managing people's return to their homes and recovery, including with food, water, psychosocial support, and helping with the restoration of critical services that they need. We also continue to help people in displacement sites. Again, we call for sustained international solidarity to meet people's urgent needs. And just to note that this afternoon, in close consultations, the head of our Peace Operations Department, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, will brief council members on the situation regarding UNIFIL and southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, Sigrid Kaag, the senior humanitarian coordinator dealing with the Gaza crisis, was in Gaza today, where she visited the newly opened Kasufim crossing. Yesterday, she was in Jerusalem, where she met with the new Israeli foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar. That was their first meeting. The meeting was to discuss the humanitarian measures that require urgent follow-up. She informed the minister that she will brief the Security Council on December 10th. She will be here physically and in person, so I'm sure she will be happy to talk to you. Turning to Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that Palestinians exhausted by months of conflict and repeated displacement continue to face severe water shortages. Citing municipal figures, OCHA says water production across Gaza decreased by 9% just last month. There's also a high percentage of water loss through the network due to damaged infrastructure, which leads to leaking pipes, among other problems. The Palestinian Water Authority estimates that more than 80% of the water sector in Gaza has been damaged. That includes wells, pumping stations, desalination plants, distribution networks, and sewage treatment plants, which are critical. On the health front, thousands of patients in Gaza still need medical evacuation outside of the Gaza Strip to receive life-saving care. Yesterday, WHO evacuated 11 children in need of cancer treatment from Gaza to Jordan, alongside 20 companions. The agency also reports that Kamal Adwan Hospital in North Gaza was attacked again last night. Dr. Tedros, the head of WHO, said a nurse, an X-ray technician, and administrative employee were injured. He called for the protection of all health workers, patients, and health facilities. This attack comes just days after the deployment of an emergency medical team to Kamal Adwan for the first time in 2 months. And just to note that here, Catherine Russell, the executive director of UNICEF, told the Security Council that the UN has verified that at least 2,406 children have been killed or injured in Ukraine since February of 2022, an average of 2 children every day. We know that the true figure is much higher, she said. She told council members that over the past 1,000 days, over 1,500 educational institutions and more than 660 healthcare facilities have been damaged or destroyed. The impact of the war, she said, is taking a terrible toll on children's mental health and robbing them of their childhood. She also said she remains deeply concerned about the number of children who've been separated from their families. We urge parties to prioritize family tracing and reunification and refrain from taking any action that would alter a child's nationality or make it more difficult for them to be reunited. And I was asked earlier about the situation in Guinea, and I can tell you that the Secretary General was deeply saddened to learn of the deadly clashes and stampede that occurred in the in Nzerekore in Guinea 2 days ago. He offers his sincere condolences to the families of the victims, wishes a prompt recovery for the wounded. He also welcomes the authorities' announcement of an investigation into these tragic events with a view to ensuring full accountability. The Secretary General reiterates the United Nations support to and solidarity with the people of Guinea. The UN country team has activated an emergency cell to address the priority needs, including humanitarian, medical, psychological support for the victims and their families, of course, with the national authorities being in the lead. WHO and UNICEF both participated in the immediate operations by providing emergency kits. And I was asked also about the situation in the Republic of Korea, and I can tell you that the Secretary General welcomes the rescinding of the martial law decree and continues to follow the situation closely. And on Georgia, we're also following with concern the developments in Georgia and stress the importance of respecting freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. It is equally crucial that all reports of human rights violations are investigated promptly and with full transparency. The Secretary General calls on all actors to refrain from actions which can lead to further violence and seek to overcome disagreements through dialogue. And we've also been following the situation in Afghanistan. I can tell you that we are concerned indeed about a reported directive from the de facto Taliban authorities that is preventing women and girls from attending classes at private medical institutions. If implemented, the reported directive would impose yet further restrictions on women and girls' rights to education and access to health care. Ultimately, it would have a detrimental impact on Afghanistan's healthcare system and on the country's development. We urge the de facto authorities to reconsider implementing this directive in view with the negative impact it would have on the lives of Afghan women and girls and people across the country. Lastly, check your wallets. Today is the International Day of Banks. Who knew? Empowering sustainable development through finance is the theme this year. It focuses on the role of financial institutions in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. On that note, Sherwin, then Deji.
Steph, anything on Namibia?
Yes, on Namibia, we take note of the announcement by the Electoral Commission of Namibia that Vice President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has won the presidential election. We note that all challenges of the results announced by the Electoral Commission should be channeled through the proper legal avenues.
What of the historic nature of her election? She would be the first female to lead Namibia.
Well, I think it is in a way, it is obviously a positive sign that Namibia will have for the first time a woman president, but it is also I think a reflection of the sad state of women leaders across the globe, that there are so few women who have been elected to the highest offices in their country. Deji. You're welcome, Sherwin.
Wow, okay. 2 days ago, UNRWA announced they have halted all the aid delivery from Karim Shalom.
Yeah.
Any updates?
Well, the update is that we still have not been able to pick up material from Karim Shalom. WFP, I think, for its part, hasn't picked up anything from Karim Shalom, I think, since October 16th, if I'm not mistaken.
So it's due to the security concerns from both the criminal gangs as well as Israel?
It's due to definitely due to the security concerns, to the or shall we say the insecurity that exists around that area.
Any other border crossings? I mean, there are still a bunch of population inside that needs humanitarian deliveries.
The insecurity, the challenges, the fact there's a conflict going on, is all over the Gaza Strip, not to mention the access restrictions to the north imposed by the IDF. So the challenges are many and they're numerous.
So just like what I asked, are there any other border crossings?
There's some. I mean, the one that Sigrid Kaag visited. There are crossings in the north as well. They all have an immense number of challenges.
Okay, two more questions on Syria, if you don't mind. A couple of days ago, we also see the reports that the airstrikes of Aleppo University Hospital. I don't because yesterday we heard that many UN staff were still in Aleppo. Can they confirm that? And who did the airstrike? Russians?
Well, we are not able, nor do we have the forensic ability to tell you who committed those airstrikes at this point. I mean,
but it happened.
It's very clear that there have been airstrikes. The staff, the UN staff, is limited in its movements, right? We are trying to do whatever we can. We're working with local partners, including the Syrian Arab Red Crescent. I think the picture, as I said, is extremely bleak.
And the other question is, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, if I remember correctly, it's on the consolidated list of the Security Council, which means it's a terrorist group.
That is correct.
So, first, can UN staff even work with the terrorist group? And second, just the other day I asked you about the Kyiv Post's report that Ukrainian trained some of those rebels. What nature would it be if a sovereign country trained people, fighters from terrorist group?
I'm not going to speculate, right, because I have no information to confirm that report one way or another. Obviously, it is very important that all member states abide by Security Council resolutions, notably ones that deal with organizations that are on Security Council terrorists. We obviously, as in all over the world, have to have operational contact with people who control a certain territory or a certain area for the benefit of the people, right, to deliver humanitarian aid, and we continue to do that wherever we need to be. Abdelhamid and then Yvonne.
Thank you. I will start with the question I posed to the guest
Mr.
speaker.
Piper, yep.
Do you endorse the statement by former Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon that what's happening in northern Gaza is ethnic cleansing?
Look, we have spoken out clearly against the fact that Palestinians have been forced to move by the violence, by orders. I think our position has been clear, and the fact that we keep talking about this every day should also be clear to all. Your second question.
My second question, and I have a third. My second question, there was an air raid on the Mawasi refugee camp today. 20 Palestinians were killed in this raid. The total people killed in the last 24 hours, 30 Palestinian and 84 wounded. When I expect to hear from you during the briefing about Palestinians who are killed on daily basis? Numbers, I'm talking about numbers.
Regularly speak, and not only speak, but condemn the killing of civilians in Gaza, and we will continue to do so. Your third question.
But no.
I mean, I think if you look back at what we've said since October 7th on a daily basis, it's pretty clear that we're reporting as much as we can and with the information that we have.
My third.
تفضل.
Today, there is, on the International Day of the Solidarity with Palestinian People, there is an opening of a photo exhibit on Gaza. I expected, as normally you announce activities in the Secretariat, why it was not?
We don't announce every exhibit that opens. We sometimes announce it when the Secretary General attends. But there is indeed a photo exhibit entitled Gaza, Palestine, A Crisis of Humanity, A Cry for Justice that'll open in the visitors' lobby this afternoon. The opening, well, is it 1:15 to 2:30, and member states, and obviously all of you are invited.
Who will represent the Secretary General in that?
Miroslav Jenča, the Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs, will represent the Secretariat.
Thank you.
Yvonne Murray.
Thanks, Steph. The Irish coroner who's looking into the circumstances surrounding the death of Irish peacekeeper Sean Rooney, almost 2 years ago now, has repeatedly asked the UN to provide more information. And the family of Sean Rooney has expressed frustration and concern that more information has not come from the UN to be provided to this inquest. Can you tell me if the UN is planning to provide information?
My understanding is that we are providing as much information as we can, as much information as we have, and we have, I think, been very clear in the way that we stand in solidarity with Private Rooney's family. Private Rooney was serving under the UN flag, wearing a blue beret. He was one of us, and we will do whatever we can to help in this investigation. You, please.
Yeah, thank you. On South Korea, as you said, the martial law is rescinded, and about yesterday, by declaring the martial law, South Korea government and the military tried to control the media and restrict the activity of lawmakers. So has the Secretary General been briefed about these issues, and is there no mention of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it in the briefing. Of course, he's very much aware about what's transpired in the Republic of Korea. I mean, this was a few hours with a lot of confusion that we saw from the announcement of the imposition of martial law. I think the important thing is that we saw the institutions work and that the martial law decree was rescinded.
So can I get his position about the restricting the freedom of speech?
Look, we stand wherever in the world, whenever we stand for freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and the freedom of the media to do its work. I think everything unfolded extremely quickly in Korea. For us, the important thing is that now things have returned to the situation just, more, let's say, 48 hours ago. The martial law decree was rescinded, and my understanding is that the media is able to operate fully and freely in Korea right now.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. I don't see any questions online. I wish you a good day, and I shall see you mañana.